Is
She should have just hooked up with a brother, honestly. Like, I
he
know
was
he seemed
ugly.
friendly, but like, but he liked her, I guess. Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation. Today we will be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing another book talk thriller, The Silent Patient, by Alex Michael. I don't know how to say that. Hold on.
Michael.
How do you say that?
Michaelides?
Michaelides?
Michaelides.
The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. We will be posting a lightly edited version on our Patreon, which is at Literary Liberation. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. I'm your co-host, Mariah. You can find me at Hungry Riot on all social media platforms.
And I'm your other co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms. I don't know popularity wise about this book. Yes.
I only have seen this on, like, Book Talk recommended books.
I agree.
I think my aunt recommended it, but she's also the one that recommended me The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret.
She's a big
and
thriller.
Colleen Hoover. So she's 50.
Has she read Verity?
So, I think so. She read like all of the Colleen Hoover books.
That's actually insane because I'm pretty sure she has like 100. She has a lot of books.
Of them.
I know Miss Colleen Hoover. Don't stop writing for real. So you did the research on Mr. Alex Michaelides.
I did find out
a man
that he's Greek.
Yes, he doesn't have a social media presence, does he?
I didn't see anything because normally when you type in like the author, you'll get social media posts, Instagram,
blog.
I didn't see anything. There could be like a superficial one used to publish or like announce books, but I don't know of any other books by him that I could see. I did see that the Brad Pitt movie thing, apparently Brad Pitt owns his own like production company, had picked up The Silent Patient, so this may be a movie at some point. I don't know when. That was in 2020. He answered it in like a Q&A on his website. I think he has like an author website. So he's an author and a screenwriter. He wrote the film The Devil You Know, starring Jennifer Lawrence. Have I ever watched that? No.
Me neither.
And the Con is On, starring Uma Thurman. Again, another movie. Never heard of it, but mainstream actresses. Very confusing.
I mean, Uma Thurman and J-Law are both very big actresses. Like they're both Oscar winners. I know J-Law is, but I don't know. I guess I'm assuming Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman is.
I would assume so, just because she's been in so much stuff.
This book though is what he's best known for, and it was his debut novel. So that
debut.
What we're going to be reviewing.
Nobody says
today.
debut. Anyways,
I can read the summary if you would like.
Yeah. Did you write this or did you?
I came up with it.
Okay. I didn't know if you just like wrote it on your own. This, compared to the last book we reviewed, this is a very simple and easy read.
Yeah, this is very easily digestible for people who are maybe curious about reading it. But the brief synopsis of The Silent Patient is a psychological thriller that follows Theo, who is a psychotherapist who starts working at a mental institution called The Grove, seeking to help a patient who is residing there named Alicia. Alicia is an artist who allegedly out of the blue tied up her husband of several years in barbed wire and shot him repeatedly, and then stopped speaking completely after the incident, didn't speak during her trial or anything. So this has fascinated Theo, and we are
their psychotherapist.
The psychotherapist and his unorthodox means to try to help Alicia heal.
I think that was another thing that turned me on to that they weren't American, was that they kept saying psychotherapist, which we don't say that here at all.
Mm-mm.
I've never heard of any. Usually it's just like psychology or like a psychologist or a therapist. I don't know if there's a difference between like a psychologist and a psychotherapist.
I think Fanon is considered a psychotherapist.
Who?
Frantz Fanon.
Don't know him.
But also, I believe he's British. Let me see. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure that he is, though. I'm pretty sure he does, like, psychotherapy.
So psychologists can perform academic research and work in labs, and other psychotherapists mainly provide talk therapy to clients. A psychotherapist is more likely to be a clinical psychologist to perform talk therapy. So I guess normally we would just call them a therapist instead of a psychotherapist, at least
Like,
here
that's
in
the
America.
colloquial word that we use is therapy here. Across the pond,
Instead
United
of
States, we just say therapist, or if you're like really fucked, you go to a psychiatrist, and that's where you get the big
the
meds.
meds.
Something interesting I found about Alex, though, before we were working on filming today, was that he studied psychotherapy for 3 years and then worked at
Oh, so this is an
place for young adults,
autobiography.
a unit. Yeah.
Just
So,
kidding.
and he got material from that to inspire his book. Like, I'm reading this off of the Wikipedia page that I was using.
Interesting. Well, it's a pretty popular book. It's got a lot of reviews, a lot of positive reviews. 4.4 stars on Amazon and 4.2 stars on Goodreads with 1.8 million reviews. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that have read it. I think that's a pretty, for a debut novel too. But I'm guessing, no offense, he's kind of like a nepo baby from like having like that background of being like working in the film industry. I think that can,
it's very strange how he was able to do all of that.
Industry plant.
It gives off the same vibes. If you were somebody that liked The Perfect Marriage,
yeah,
I think it's very similar.
I think it's similar to The Perfect Marriage, except for instead of the police work, it's more of like the psychology of it and that like the therapist part of it. Because
I have a lot of criticisms to make, and a lot I can't say without spoilers.
Well, other than that, would you recommend this book?
Can we get into my proper review? We can just do reviews and then get straight into the spoilers, because I don't think we can talk about the criticisms and the positives of the book without giving a little bit more nuance.
It is very hard to discuss that. I think that's all thrillers. We've always talked about this. Every thriller on this podcast we've discussed. It's hard to give a proper critique of it if you haven't read it, because there's so many things that like get explained later on that you can maybe critique and stuff like that. I mean, pretty much in the beginning, I think the main thing that you can like kind of critique of it is maybe how like Alicia is written and stuff like that, because like obviously the main character is Theo. He's kind of like a little bit of a misogynist in some ways, and that like he's like he kind of reminds me of like Marcos from Tender as the Flesh. Kind of like that vibe in that way, where I don't know. But, like, it kind of like that, and then, like, I don't know if this is, like, and that's something, too, that I think with this book, especially without having this author, Alex, he doesn't have, like, a social media preference. You don't know, like, if he was intentionally writing, like, Theo and Alicia these ways to, like, because they could be entirely intentional, and then it'd be kind of like a talking point over, like, in, like, a social, like, the word I'm looking for, like,
commentary?
Yeah, like a social commentary on maybe how, like, therapy is and, like, psychotherapy and things like that are for people, because I think it's a lot better now, but I'm sure, like, even, like, 10 years ago is a very much a taboo subject within this, like, within, like, society and things like that, and I think just now people are really starting to get into more therapy and things like that, so I think that can possibly affect things in many ways.
I think I follow and I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3-star, though. I thought it was kind of mid. I'm gonna be honest.
I liked it. I give it 4 stars.
I like the pacing. The pacing was
really good. I think it's probably the best book talk thriller I've read, personally.
It's very easily written. It's written in a way where, I don't know, things are explained to people who maybe aren't familiar with.
You don't have to be a reader to, like, read this. But I do think that there are some, like, literary references that can be interested if you are more into reading, where it's not super complex for, like, a average reader, but then it also can be more complex in ways that if you do consume more literature, then it can be entertaining.
I thought it had really good potential, but then I didn't like Theo, though, and I think that's, like, I don't know if you are supposed to like him
I didn't think so.
Because he just, like, was woe is me the whole time for a variety of reasons that we'll get into later, but
I don't think...
I just, like, even those things happening, he just acts like, well, he's, like, the top of the, like, I've had a tough childhood Olympics.
I think
and that nobody else can live up to it.
I think it's intentional that you're not supposed to like Leo because of the way that his inner monologue is written about how he talks about his wife and how he talks about he ends up having his own psychotherapist that he like respects and stuff like that, but then completely ignores any advice that she's ever given him. And I think that shows that he's supposed to be like an unlikable person and entirely insane to me. As I described it in my notes, cuckoo bananas.
Cuckoo bananas. That's a good way of describing it. He also violates, I'm sure there's a British version of HIPAA within the first 40 pages.
Yeah.
And that was really frustrating as somebody that's just recently gone through all of my coursework again to work in healthcare, revisiting all of that. I'm like, wow, that was quick, off the spot. You can just like spot it. It's like, this guy is supposed to have gone to school for all of these years, and the HIPAA is something that's just taught to anybody.
I think that's the thing though, is that like you have to have like a suspension of disbelief whenever you are reading like a fictional thriller, because like this book wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if he just acted like a normal therapist.
But even if we go beyond that, I don't like how the author wrote the women in this book.
They were all either like, it's always like kind of like the incel, like everyone's either a mother or a bitch. Is like how
there's no in between.
Yeah, like they're either like a mothering, like caring person that's like cares for them, or they're like the other opposite end, which I don't know. I think that's something that can be like attributed to it's a debut novel. Like obviously like somebody's not gonna know how to write in-depth characters and things like that. And then I think also you have to take into mind, since it is first person's perspective, from Theo's perspective, he obviously has like these gender biases and things, so it could possibly be intentional, in my opinion, because
I'm not willing to give Alex that much credit though.
But I think I can, because of like the references that are used in this book, the literary references. The Greek tragedy is mentioned. What is it called? Electios, something like that. You know what the name of it is?
Othello?
No, that's the Shakespearean play that is also referenced. But then there's the Greek tragedy.
Oh, the Alcestis?
Alcestis, but I think those, like having those deeper references within it kind of makes me think that it was like, it could possibly have been intentional to how Theo was viewing, because he is kind of like an incel in a couple ways, that I think that's why he views women in these two drastic separations of women, where you're either a mothering, loving character or you hate the other women, you know?
I guess. I don't know. I just did not fucking like him the whole time.
And I think that's intentionally. I don't think you're supposed to like him. You're supposed to kind of...
It's hard reading a book, though, with the main character. There's not a whole lot of, like, diversity of point of views until you get into it later, but even then...
It's just journal entries where the only...
no true dialogue. There's not a lot going on, so you're just getting this shitty main character's voice, and, like, the misogyny is... It gets old. I think that's why it took me so long. I did not sprint through this book at all.
But I wonder if you viewed it as, like, intentionally through the author, if you would have gotten it better, because I got it that it was entirely intentional, because... Do you want to just go ahead and get into spoilers now?
Send it.
Because I think, I mean, even though this is kind of like... This is going to definitely be a shorter episode. Shorter books. Thrillers don't have as much substance to discuss, so now we will officially be going into spoiler territory. But I think that is entirely why Theo ends up meeting his demise at the end of the book, because he's not a good person at all. And I mean, like, even the men in it are not very good people either. Like John Felix, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
He's shit too.
Yeah, Jean Felix, which is Alicia's gallery owner.
Yes.
He's garbage. He gives off weird vibes.
Yeah.
Christian.
I thought he was gay though. So like whenever like
so did I thought he was queer.
Yeah, I thought so too. And then they were like, "Oh, he's in love with Alicia." Like, is he though? Is he really?
I honestly thought he was in love with Gabriel, and it was gonna end with like Gabriel and him working together to get her put away or something.
I did not get that at all.
I was like, maybe it'll just send it and do it that way.
That's what should have happened.
And then Christian, which again,
I ping whenever like she started talking too much about her like psychotherapist or whatever that she went to go see. I was like, I didn't know it was gonna be him specifically, but I knew it was gonna be somebody else, like somebody that had to work within that facility. I thought it could have been the other guy, the like his boss or whatever. I can't remember his name.
Professor Diomedes.
Yeah, that's the Greek guy, which I guess is Alex's self-insert.
Yeah.
That's definitely
I
like
realized that after. I was like, oh, that one's supposed to be Alex.
yeah, that's definitely him viewing himself as this great psychotherapist because he went to school for it, I guess.
Calm, logical, down to earth, wants to help the patients.
Yeah. But I wonder if it's something that you could go into more talking too, because obviously, like, since Alicia was rich, her family was rich, her dad was rich, the care that they got at this, like, psychological ward comparatively to what it could have been in, like, a poorer area, because you said you've noticed that with your new job, you work in a much richer area. Obviously, you don't work with, like, people that need psychotherapy, but...
No, but they're all on, like, the vast majority of people that I take care of because of their advancement in their dementia are on, like, the psychoactive, like, medications to help assist them because there is a lot of things that come with dementia, like hallucinations and behaviors, and it's nothing that they can help themselves. It's just like their brains are shrinking slowly over time, and it's fucked. But I don't know how, because the healthcare in the UK is so different than the US. So I like here in the US, like, you know, like they would be like, she would have been taken care of.
Yeah,
She would have been sitting real pretty. She would have gotten top tier care. But in the UK, I don't think they have a two-tier system with their healthcare, or they the Tories or whatever they're called.
Tories?
Tories?
Yeah.
The Tories were trying to implement one, so I don't know at what point in
If they
time
actually... I didn't think
made.
it actually went through, though.
I still think they have, like, universal healthcare for the most part. People from England, if you're listening to this, I am sorry. I'm not super versed.
You're not well
in
versed in...
specifically
Yeah.
England's
We have too
healthcare.
many
I
problems
just
over here.
know it's objectively better than anything that we have here in the United States. So I think it's a bit more equitable than here.
That's what I was getting to, because, like, since we have such a drastic difference in, like, the United States, where, like, Alicia would have been in, like, the top care facility where she would have gotten cared for, but then Alif, I think that's how you say her name, there was another woman that was in the psychiatry ward that she had issue with. She had, like, no family left, and she didn't seem like she had, like, very much money she was coming from, but that she was still within the same, like, healthcare facility as Alicia, which in the United States, I don't think that would have happened at all.
Not that I can think of.
You know, and I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to see, at least, like, just with, like, even just, like, even though, obviously, like, England is still very capitalistic and things like that, but it's just crazy that the lack of human rights that are here in the United States are so diminished in that way.
When it comes to healthcare.
Yeah. It's actually, like, crazy to me that even, like, but I don't know how accurate that it is that, like, low income people are still, like, placed with higher income people within being, like, a mental facility and stuff like that. I just know, like, here in the United States that there are definitely, like, low income, like, healthcare facilities and stuff like that where people get the bare bones treatment and things like that, and then we do have, like, higher end for, like, the nice rehab centers that celebrities end up going to all the time and things like that.
Even if we take it, like, a step further, when there is, like, a mental health crisis, the police come, and oftentimes, like, there can be violence against people with mental health problems or who are having a crisis. They're likely to be met with violence rather than compassion, because that's just the way our system has been set up, and it's despicable. Truly, it's inhumane.
Yeah.
So I imagine that could play into it too.
Well, because they have, like, security there, but they're kind of like nurses are, like, the security, except for, like, the one manager or whatever that I guess is, like, hired by, like, the company or something. But even, like, the lady, Stephanie, I think is her name, the manager lady, she doesn't do much in, like, the security. It's always, like, Yuri, who's, like, seems to me like some type of nurse in a way, or, like, some type of, like, trained professional like you are. And even though things do get violent with them, they don't call the police on
I think
Alicia.
Once you're in, like, an institution, or at least, like, the places that I work in, I work in a non-restraint facility, but when it, like, there is another place up at the hospital where people are having severe mental health crises, and they can do, whether it is, like, a medical restraint or a physical restraint. So Yuri being able to grab Alicia around, like, that would be considered a restraint. So I imagine they're certified to do that, and therefore they wouldn't need the security. Like, they probably just need to keep people out and then they have badges and stuff to like
get in,
keep different sections locked in, which is what I do with work. I have to like beep it, and they're like, you better make sure that's closed.
Yeah, to make sure. I mean, I'm sure it's also for like the safety of patients too, so they don't happen to like get out, especially with somebody who's not in their right mental state, is not going to be viewing like going out into the outside world as more than likely the best option for them, But I also like, from this story, it was very hard to tell what time period it was written in, to me personally, because like, at least like, I understand like European, and I think that's something that's really different here, is that Europeans smoke cigarettes a lot more than people here in the United States do, which a lot of people smoke. I know hundreds of people that smoke cigarettes or like vapes or whatever. But I do think that like, at least like here in the United States, it's kind of like common courtesy where nobody smokes like inside or really outside public places like very often, unless it's like a bar or something like that. I feel like that's the only time where you see people.
That, or maybe it's cracked down on more here. I really don't know like the difference between the two, because in the United States we have very specific smoke
zones.
Like you go into a smoking area.
Like if
you're at work, there is a specific smoking area. You have to go within there. You can't be within like 6 feet of a door. So and that is so crazy to me.
So, and I think it's interesting too, the portrayal of mental illness in this, because me and Mariah are both SSRI girlies up in here. Some of us take them, some of us don't. We'll leave that discussion up to who's who. But I find it interesting that I don't know if it was just like supposed to be like for the book, like how much medication is like put on these people, which I don't know how, like, that's what I was saying. Like, I don't know how much medication is like here in the United States, like either comparatively, just because like I've never been to a rehab center where like they're forcing pills, but I feel like that's kind of like a stereotype, I guess.
It wouldn't surprise me if they did, because when we would send people out for like having mental health crises, they were having like behaviors, or talking about like suicidal ideations, I would get their charts back, and they'd be given like Ativan, like a huge dose of Ativan, or like Halidol, which is like an
I think
hallucinogenic.
This might be a controversial opinion, but I think if the people, specifically you, Mariah, because you work with older people, I think if those old people want to kill themselves, we should let them.
I do live in Oregon, right?
Yes.
It is like a euthanasia state. So you can get
so you can.
Yeah.
I thought it was only for like cancer or something.
If you're terminally ill, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, but one of them is you have to be mentally stable enough to make that decision.
So if you just want to die and you're old as fuck, you can't.
No, like if you have like a dementia diagnosis, you would not be allowed.
That's crazy.
And if you get a dementia diagnosis, I found this out, is that they will confiscate any weapons you have. You have to get rid of them. I did not know this until I was taking care of another person. They made them transfer them to somebody else.
Absolutely.
And then in a lot of the facilities we work in, they're suicide-proof doors. The blinds, you lift them, there's no tabs.
Oh my god. I want my future children to know to just take me out back and shoot me with a gun whenever I get old. Please don't make me go.
This is what happens. We could go through the criticisms. You were talking about the time, like you couldn't figure out a time, and that seemed to be a really big critique a lot of people had, was that it was lacking a sense of place. It could lack a sense of time. Because I got that until at the very end, where we saw that there was actually like 2 different timelines.
I thought that was actually really interesting, though. I thought that was a cool thing to like, where it turns out, because what happens is that, basically, spoilers for the absolute end of this book. If you want to actually read it, go read it, even though we already mentioned we're in the spoiler zone, but this is like actual spoilers. At the end of the book, you find out that it was Theo that convinced Alicia to kill her husband. So she did kill her husband, but she, basically what happened was that Theo's wife, Kathy, was cheating on him with a man, and he didn't know the man, but then one day he started like following her to meet with this man, and he saw who it was, so he followed him home, and then he began stalking Alicia outside of her home because he knew that her husband was cheating on her. Theo knew that Gabriel was cheating on Alicia, and so he started stalking Alicia, I guess, to sort of like get her to kill her husband, because he was upset that his wife cheated on him, and so he wanted to take it out on Gabriel, and by like doing this, he like harassed Alicia, And then he eventually broke into their home and like tied up Alicia and was like, when's your husband gonna be home? And she's like, oh, he'll be home at 7. And then he calls, oh, I actually won't be home till 10, so just go ahead and eat dinner and get home without me, because obviously he was probably cheating on Alicia at that time. And then he comes home or whatever later, and then he ties him up or whatever, and then he's like talking to him. He's like, hey, like, do you love your wife? He's like, I love my wife so much. And he's like, okay, so can I kill you instead of your wife? And he's like silent. And then so Alicia's like, okay, like, I thought you loved me, sort of thing, like you're supposed to want to die for me. We said till death do us part. That's our whole marriage thing. And he goes, I don't want to die. So then Theo unties Alicia and just leaves the gun there, walks out of the house, and then Alicia ends up shooting Gabriel like 5 times in the face, because he basically said that he doesn't love his wife and that he's not as fully committed to her as what she thought, and that he would have rather lived and watched her die than have died himself.
Which, that was like the tip of the iceberg for Alicia and her emotional
She already had
stability.
like mental issues, because it turns out as a child her dad said that he wished she died instead of his wife, because her mother died in like a suicidal car crash and she survived the car crash. And so then her father was like, I wish my wife survived and not my child. So
not only was she unwanted by the two of them, and then she had to live with her Aunt Lydia, who was also abusive.
Yeah.
So she had 3 adult figures in her life who were supposed to be loving and compassionate towards her, who just let her down time and time again when she like was in a very crucial developmental portion, like being a child. Having that happen to you is terrible.
And then hearing your father saying that he wished you died instead of your mother, which, I mean, like, to be honest, like, not to defend her father, like, I wouldn't have said this, but I can see, I've always told, like, Tyler, like, if I've ever, like, if there's, like, something that happens where, like, I'm gonna die or, like, our child's gonna die, I said save me instead. Because you can always have more kids, and, like, I don't know. I know that's, like, controversial, but I also don't have any children. There's no no children are here right now, so it's all, like, hypothetical. So obviously situations would change depending on what happens and things. But at this current time, because I have no children, obviously I'm saying save myself.
Anyways, yeah, Alicia hearing not only that her husband had cheated on her, but also that
didn't
he was willing
fully
to, like,
love her. And she thought he was like a devoted husband that was like, because like he seemed like he was very much obsessed with her, and like she would do everything for him pretty much, because like even like her brother or Gabriel's brother was like predatory on her and stuff like that, and like harassed her in multiple ways, and she ignored it because she knew that like her brother or her husband wanted to have a good relationship with her brother, and that she like very much shoved shit down for Gabriel, and then he just threw it all back at her face. We're not really caring about her.
She should have just hooked up with a brother, honestly. Like, I know
he was ugly,
but like, but he liked her, I guess.
I don't care if he's bald. Ew.
He's strong with being bald.
Bald people are ugly. Show me one hot bald guy. You can't. They don't exist.
You don't think Mr. Clean?
Ew. What? Howie Mandel? Ugly. Who else is there? I don't know any other bald celebrities. Bald people are ugly, and I stand by that. That's
what all happened with Max. Max was creeping up on her and trying to smooch on her or something.
Yeah, and she like bit his tongue, and then like. But then at the end, whenever, like... But it's crazy, because he was, like... And he had a wife, too. Like, not till later, but, like... He got a wife, and, like, he was still, like, my Alicia! So, I don't understand their whole, like, relationship, because he was, like, creepy and obsessive with her. But moving on from that, and then, another thing is that, there are plot holes, you said, on this?
Oh, yeah, some people had mentioned that it was strange how thorough they explained the security protocol going in, and he had to give over his lighter because it was a risk for catching everything on fire. But then later, him and Alicia are out back and they're sharing a cigarette. So it's like, how did the cigarette get lit?
Matches?
But why are matches not considered a fire?
Well, I think the thing is that matches, since they can't burn as long, they only burn for like a short period of time, because like they can only burn like as long as the wood's there, which is like, and they can't like, the thing is that with lighters and stuff, you can like finick them to make them constantly burning for a long period, like as much oil and stuff, and you can also like take them apart, and then they can be, the metal I'm sure can be like an issue with like weaponry and stuff like that. I just know, I'm assuming matches because, like, in TV shows and stuff, like, where it'd be, like, they'd be smoking, like, an American Horror Story asylum. That's my knowledge of mental facilities.
Did they have lighters, though, back
They had
then?
matches. That's how they lit their cigarettes, though. But they were allowed to smoke in, like, the facility because, like, it was, like, the 1950s.
That's fair. People were also very critical of the ending and the overall, like, police investigation and how, like, we find out everything that happened with Alicia, even though, like, she shot him, how there was extra, like, rope and stuff that was likely around her, or the wires that had
I
wrapped
think that
her
is
up.
a horrible criticism to have because we know that the police are incompetent. I mean, I know they're more incompetent here in the United States than they probably are in, like, England or whatever. But police are still police. They're still stupid people that don't actually, like, know anything about, like, and it's so crazy because, like, the detective and stuff, like, you don't have to, like, get a degree in, like, criminology or anything like that, like, to become a detective. I'm sure it helps. But, like, the people that become detectives are people that, like, move up the police ladder and things like that. But it's not like they actually have to, like, study, like, human psyche or understand why people kill people or even, like, how to investigate a scene. They all, like, learn it, like, there, like, I guess. But it's not, like...
All I know about police training is when I was, like, getting out of high school, one of my friends that was older went to the police academy, and he was saying they spent a lot of time on the range, like, shooting. Like, that was a huge
Well,
portion
that's what I'm
of, like,
saying.
police
Well, I
training.
don't know. I guess I don't know about the UK specifically, but I know, like, here, like, you don't have to get, like, like, they have degrees in criminology and stuff like that you can take here, but I don't think you need those to become a detective here. You just, like, rank up, I thought.
I think you can. I think you just rank up.
That's what I thought. Like, it started where you're, like, a person on the ground chasing after people, and then eventually, like, your goal is to become a detective. But they don't...
You probably have to take some courses through the state because it's, like, a
Yeah, but I'm
thing.
sure it's, like, something similar to, like, what you do where it's, like, more video courses, at least now, where it's not really, like, like, you're not actually, like, learning from a professor or somebody that, like, has solved hundreds of cases or anything like that. Which is sad. I wish, like, being a detective was actually a good career because I feel like that's something I'd be really good at. But I could never do that because that's a horrendous thing to, like, participate in that. I'd be the one solving crimes, let me tell you.
You're solving all the crimes. Oh, and then what was another one of the criticisms? Let me look. I've made a list.
Injection
of the morphine and how Alicia was able to completely transcribe everything that happened the night of the murder, and then also the fact that he, like,
stabbed
had
her.
Like, come into her room. Theo was the one that actually was the one that killed her.
But she never died. Let us make that clear. She's not dead. She's just in a comatose state, and you don't know if she wakes up. But
do you think he's gonna milk this and get a second book?
I don't think he could. Unless it's, like, Alicia's revenge story, where she, like, kills Theo in prison, which I'm assuming go to prison. I think that's, like, supposed to be what happens. But because, like, I don't really know how morphine works to be, like, a lethal dosage.
Slow acting, which takes 30 to 60 minutes, and then there's fast act. And I think when I gave out morphine, it was like a sublingual, so it went underneath the tongue for people who are on hospice.
She was injected in her wrist.
Yeah, so it must have been like one of the fast acting ones. So I don't know how he got it. That is my biggest thing, because a med cart would have been locked.
But I think that's what they talked about, where Yuri was intentionally leaving it open because he was selling the drugs to Alif, because they were talking about, like, pills being pushed about. Yeah, so that's what I think. You're
supposed to lock it right afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fail this.
But because, like, the security guard was saying that they've been finding it open multiple times and meds missing and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of, like, what they were kind of alluding to, that it turns out that. Other than that.
What is the next one? The people were concerned that some of the themes presented in the institutions would steer people away from getting a mental health assistance if they needed it.
I'm thinking
but that is kind of speculative, I think.
I agree in that way, because also that's assuming that everyone that reads this book has mental health issues, which is not true in many ways. But then also, like, no, but I think most people understand that this book is a work of fiction. And, like, a lot of the times whenever, like, you're viewing something that's, like, a work of fiction and, like, mental health issues and stuff like that, or, like, any, like, section where whether it's like doctors or whatever, you know that you can't take a work of fiction as gospel. It's like, I mean, look at like police shows. They solve crime all the time. We know that doesn't happen, you know? So
Ding, ding, ding.
I don't understand. Like, I don't think anybody that's reading this book is like, oh my god, what if my doctor acts like this? If if you think your doctor's gonna have like act like that, then you obviously have some other issue that probably would have already prevented you from going into that facility anyways. If you're very anxious about people like that in general. Whenever I think there's too much money, at least here in the United States, it's too much money and too much like things that go into it where people are going into that just to be for nefarious reasons. Where I think majority of the people are going into that. That's why like you inherently trust your doctor because of it's so much work and stuff like that of course they're going to go in to actually care about the well-being of their patients rather than just going in there to be, I don't know, insane.
Yeah, it's not like the way it used to be where it was
Anybody off the street.
Primarily directed at like black and brown bodies or women and like lower class peoples who were having like genuine mental health crises and just like throwing them away and like just abusing them day in and day out and doing experimental practices. It's very much cracked down, but also, I mean, I don't know how it was in the UK, just in the United States.
I don't know because I know like at least like in like the 40s or whatever, whenever they had like electroshock therapy and stuff like that. Because reading this, I think it's interesting that I read The Bell Jar last year, maybe the year before. I read it and that's another person. It's a fictional story but like semi-autobiographical by Sylvia Plath, who is a famous poet. I'm pretty sure she's American, but I know she like died in the UK. But she had lots of mental health issues and stuff like that, and then I think she actually did go to a mental facility, but then like in The Bell Jar, her character goes to the mental facility and nobody there is like nefarious either, and she still gets like electroshock therapy there too, because I think with like the research at the time, people genuinely thought that was what
that and lobotomies.
Yeah, that's. I don't think she got a lobotomy. Maybe she did. I don't remember. I know she did get like electroshock therapy, but that's something that I think a lot of the people genuinely at the time thought that would help. Where I don't think, like, obviously there was some sick people who like did it for fun, especially I'm sure back then. But I do think people that are going into like specifically mental health facilities now genuinely care about making a difference and helping people, which is why you don't get electroshock therapy anymore. You just get pills or something, or talking therapy or art therapy or what other type of therapies may have you.
I did see that electroshock therapy is making a comeback, but
where at so I could go?
It's a lot more controlled and there's more research to support it, like the way they wear the caps. It's like zapping their brain so they don't have to take SSRIs. Because you can get sick from taking SSRIs.
So where is this at?
I'll have to like find a place that does it.
Yeah, and reference
Hey Google, how to get electroshock in 2023.
I need to know. I've actually been very interested in lobotomies. If anybody knows someone that does them, I'm willing to be tested on.
You see those before and afters, like they look straight chillin' in a lot of the cases.
No, for real. That's what I'm saying. Like, why did we stop this practice? Okay, but other than that, misogyny of the mental health care providers, I think that's just men in general anyways, to be honest.
I think that was probably my biggest critique throughout the whole thing. It's not just like the mental health care providers, but just how the women in general were written. It really frustrated me, like how.
But that's why I'm saying, because I think you could see that it was more like intentionally, because it was first person perspective, because I feel like from like whenever we did get like the journal entries from Alicia and stuff like that, she didn't feel like it was as like problematic to me. It felt like I could very much relate to her in ways whenever I was reading that,
especially with how she talked about her neighbor Barbie.
Yeah,
because from Theo's perspective, she's like a dumb blonde
bitchy yapper
who's like all about the drama, which is like true, but the way that Alicia depicts her is significantly different.
Yes.
And then I would be curious how she views Rowena, which is like the art therapist, and Elif. The only one that doesn't get painted badly is Indiria, which was the other psychotherapist.
Yeah, which is again the motherly, with the same thing with Ruth, his psychotherapist herself. Anybody that was like painted in this motherly light, they got a motherly perspective. Like his mom wasn't even painted very badly, because obviously she was in like an abusive situation. So like all of like the motherly characters are painted in a very positive light, while the other women. But then versus whenever you do get Alicia's perspective, she's not, at least the only other woman we see her talking about is like her mother or like her Aunt Lydia, which is obviously abusive towards her. So of course she's gonna have a negative.
Alex had so many quotes from Freud.
I guess so. Oh, I didn't even connect that. Okay, this book is an Oedipus complex book, I guess. They're all about Oedipus up in here, I guess.
Well,
we just cracked the code.
Didn't know this. You didn't know all of this stuff or had like the context to analyze this book.
Well, because
I can understand.
With most books, if there's a quote at the beginning of the chapter, I'm gonna be real, I don't read it.
I'm like, that's a lot of words. Too bad I ain't reading them.
Like Babbel does it, and I try to, but then they'd be boring, so I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Like, it's not that important. Like, I feel like the quote, like, if it's a quote at the beginning of the book, I'll read it, but if it's every chapter, like this book and Babbel's doing it too, I'm not reading it every chapter. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care that much, you know?
Well, that makes a whole lot more sense, and it makes the character make sense.
But see, what I think would have made it like a perfect 5-star read for me was I was leaning too much in the Othello reference, because so in the beginning, middle of the book ish, you learn that Theo's wife Kathy is in a play called Othello, and I read it in high school, so I didn't remember too much about it. I've since read like the synopsis on Wikipedia, so I kind of remember like the plot points and stuff like that, and I had Mariah read it. So if you haven't read Othello, basically what happens is Othello, which it was really interesting, like why we chose to read in high school, because Othello is the first like person of color. Like Othello's supposed to be a black man. That's how Shakespeare wrote him, was as a black man. I don't know if they discussed that in the Wikipedia thing, but I know we talked about that a lot in school. Which is really interesting because you know, like, about, like, early European times, it's very much, like, racist and things like that, where people of color aren't getting any representation in any way, so I thought it was very interesting that Shakespeare did that at that time. But, so since Othello was referenced so much in this book, I thought Kathy was going to die. Do you know, like, the Chekhov's gun thing? Like, the whole, like, film theory for that?
Chekhov's gun?
You can say no. So
no,
basically, in like films and things like that, or like plays and stuff, like I think it was based off of like a play, Chekhov's wrote a play or something, where basically like in Act 1, if they show a gun, then that means that it's going to be fired by the end of the play, or like it's going to be used by the end of the play. So like to me, it felt like it was unfinished because they mentioned Othello so much, and then Kathy did not end up dying, because that's the whole point of like a Chekhov's gun, because like mentioning it in that way makes it completely pointless and makes it feel like it's like just for like the spectacle.
Maybe that's why it felt like it wasn't great, is because it was missing like an extra layer at the end that would have,
where I think if he would have killed Kathy at the end or something, I think that could have been like a really interesting thing, because then it shows directly how mentally ill he is, because you already know he's mentally ill, but I think easily some people, especially men, can view this guy as like the hero of the story directly, because you can tell that Theo is fucked up because he thinks he is the hero of the story when he is not the hero of the story. What he did is incredibly wrong and incredibly insane. He needs to be in his own mental facility for what he did to Alicia, for stalking her and doing what he's done to her, like mentally manipulating her. It's actually insane. And the fact that he gets basically no consequences for his action, like obviously it's implied that he's arrested at the end of the thing, but like that doesn't do anything enough for it, where I think like where you could still have like the audience being on his side specifically, which I think that's what made it kind of fall apart, and I think that's why you can have the critique where it feels so misogynistic, because it's not like, it's never painted him as like a perfect villain, where he is the villain of the story. He is the antagonist. Like, he's the protagonist, but he is like, I think Alicia is the protagonist in ways that she is very positively, and like these things have happened to her, and that's what made her mentally break. While he had issues that happened to him while he was younger, obviously, but it still doesn't excuse the actions that he chose to make as an adult. And that's one thing with like mental illness and stuff like that. Like, yeah, mental illness will affect like what you do and stuff like that, but you are still held responsible for those negative actions that your mental health causes you to do. If it's out on other people, it's different if it's on yourself, which is, I think, explicitly like what Alicia did, where she wasn't talking, where that, I don't think that has a negative impact. She doesn't want to talk to you. That's no negative impact on Alicia on how she's doing.
didn't like how when it did come like push to shove, when she's like, oh, I didn't talk because I didn't think I had anything to say. I did not like that as like her results or whatever. I can't think of what the word is. Like, that's what she came to, where she was just like, well, I didn't have anything to say and it was too late.
But that's what I don't think that's like very true. I don't know if they maybe just like put that in, because I do think like with like the play that she identified as, the Electos or whatever it was called, the Greek tragedy that she saw and that she really related to like the main character, because she was like, basically the story is that like this dude from like the Greek tragedy, he's like supposed to die, but then the gods are like, if you can find someone else to die in your place, then you don't have to die. So then he's like asking hundreds of people, like his parents, if they would die for him, other people. And then his wife is like, oh, I'll die for you, I guess. And he's like, thank you, babe, go die for me. And then it ends up where Hercules rescues her from the underworld, and in the show she didn't actually have to die or whatever, and then she comes back and she never like talks again because her husband sentenced her to death without truly loving her. And I think it's like the betrayal of someone that you love is what makes it so that it feels like it's somebody that you trust wholeheartedly, and that's somebody that you marry, usually in marriage, somebody that you marry to or like decide to spend the rest of your life with, if you're not for marriage or whatever. If that person like condemns you to death and doesn't want to die for you, I can see that betrayal can hurt you so bad, where like you just feel like there's no point in even trying to build relationships again. And I think that's why she decided not to talk, essentially, because like if the people that are like number one in your life, your father, your husband, they've condemned you to death, those are the people that you're supposed to trust with your life. Even her mother technically like condemned her to death, putting her in that car and crashing the car, trying to kill her. That what is the point of making relationships with other people if you just view of all these strong relationships that you thought you had, if they just turn out to be nothing? You know, because that's what I think ultimately is how she felt. But I thought I was leaning more into the Othello vibes whenever I was reading it, because I thought that Alicia was going to be more like Iago in Othello. So basically the story of Othello is this dude, like Othello, he becomes like a general for like the war. I don't remember what war it is, but he becomes like a general or whatever. And then instead of promoting Iago, who is like next in line, he ends up promoting Cassio, something like that. He ends up promoting him to like the next in line for the general or whatever. And then Iago is entirely jealous of that because he thought like he was supposed to be next in line or whatever. So then he was pissed. So then what he does is that he tries to get Cassio killed, and it doesn't end up working out. So then what he does is that he ends up framing Cassio to make it look like he's having an affair with Othello's wife, Desdemona. And because Othello ends up like, Iago's planting these seeds in his brain that like he's getting like cheated on and stuff like that, he ends up killing his wife because he thinks that she's being unfaithful to him. And it turns out she was never actually cheating on him. It was just framed by Iago. And then, I think Iago's wife ends up finding out that he's, like, saying that, like, Cassio is cheating or whatever, and, like, tells Othello, so then Othello ends up killing Iago. But then Iago dies or something. But anyways, so I was kind of viewing, because, like, Kathy was playing Desdemona in Othello, I thought it was going to be that she wasn't actually cheating on. I thought, like, it was just, like, him going, like, insane himself. And so he thought...
I was hoping it was going to end up being, but then she did.
Yeah, she did cheat on him. But then I thought that Theo thought he was, like, Othello, where, like... And then maybe, like, Alicia was kind of, like, playing into that being cheated on. Because, like, maybe I thought that, like, Gabriel maybe did cheat on her. And then, that, like, she was kind of more nefarious. And, like, that's the reason why she actually... Because I don't even know if she ever found out that, like... Gabriel was cheating on her specifically, did he?
No, it wasn't until Theo came in and was just like...
He cheated on you, by the way. Which I thought it could have meant a lot more where that could have been more related to like that. Where at least I don't know. I kind of wanted Kathy to die. Like Kathy, I didn't think that was that bad of a person. Like, I mean, she wasn't the best character either, but I thought it would have been more interesting if she did end up dying. It could have made for a more well-rounded story, I thought. That's my criticism of it.
I would have it was missing something.
And I do, yeah. I think with the references to Othello too much are the issue.
I can't think of anything else. That was pretty much it. It's not a horrible story by any means, but like I think Kristen articulated a better criticism for how the book could have been there ended differently, and it would have been I would have felt like more sated as a reader reading through it. Like that would have been good if they had ended it with more tragedy.
It's the potential that it has, and I think that's a lot of the issue with specifically, I guess, Book Talk books is the potential they always have. They always have like those great ideas, but they can never be executed properly, I guess.
Because you're just not emotionally invested in the characters enough for it to be meaningful when like these big twists turn around or happen.
Or I think if Theo would have died or something. I do think it was unpredictable. I did like at the end where you find out that the two different timelines, that it ends up being that you're following two different timelines. I thought that was really interesting. Because I think that it makes it more eligible for a reread, which I think is ultimately why I gave it a higher star than like I did for like The Housemaid or like The Perfect Marriage or anything like that, where you'd be more interested in a reread for it because then you can easily see where like the timelines split and things like that, where it can make it more something that's easy, like you can pull out more information from, versus other thrillers. I don't think they have rereadability unless you can completely forget what happened in them, which most of the time you can't. Not saying that I'll reread this anytime soon either, though, but I just think it has that eligibility versus other thrillers do not usually have that because their twist is so.
I'm curious if we'll end up reading another one, but
another thriller or another
thriller, the one that people were like, oh my god. I'm sure something will
come
up.
More, I don't know if there's even been that many more thrillers that I've been seeing. I actually really enjoy reading thrillers too. I think I've learned that this year, where I like having a fast-paced book to read that I can easily get through, especially like it's nice being able to like only have something you're reading for like 1 or 2 days, because it never takes me long to read a thriller. I think the most I've spent on a thriller is like 3 days probably, and I think I really appreciate that about most thrillers, that they're pretty quick to get through.
I guess this concludes our episode of Literary Liberation.
A Silent Patient.
You have Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides.
I don't know Greek.
I'm very excited for the next episode.
Next time we will be doing Babel, which I have not finished yet. I am about 200 pages in, and I am already obsessed. I know this is going to be the best book I read in 2023. It is amazing, and I think we're gonna have to carve out a good chunk of time to discuss this. It's going to be a long episode. It's a long book, 500 something pages, and it's got so much to discuss. It's going to be a long episode. Like, I think it's going to be a very long episode.
I'm excited. So we'll see you next time, and don't forget to check Patreon for our newsletter. Kristen just wrote a really incredible essay critiquing the whole lesser of two evils liberal argument that you keep seeing online. So I highly recommend it. We have a 7-day free trial on there, but if not, it's like $3 a month.
Yeah, $3 a month.
Just subscribe to it. And you can see all of our other content, and then the Ice Planet Barbarians essay will probably be coming
very soon.
Soonish.
And then also Mariah is planning on doing like more reviews. At least on our TikTok, of like smaller books that we will not be discussing on the podcast. Just because I'm not reading all the stupid shit that Mariah reads.
I am at like, I think Goodreads or Storygraph said like 227 books finished for the year. So I gotta review those and put them somewhere.
Yeah, that's a lot of books. I'm at 47 right now. 3 more to my 50 for the year.
That's reasonable. That's healthy. That means you have a life.
I mean, I don't really have a life. I mean, I just game and watch TV. But, okay, other than that, I'm stopping the recording. Thanks for watching. Follow us, like it, and subscribe.